Welcome to the series titled News and Views, in which I hope to comment on day to day developments, but to do so from a spiritual and non political perspective. I do this particularly because my community, the Christian community, ultimately my community is humanity, but for the time being, let's say for practical reasons, my religious community has been told over decades and centuries that people who are spiritually inclined should shut their eyes and ears, and preferably their hearts and minds also, to the developments in the world. I consider that a bit downright stupid. I believe it's impossible for a person to live in this world and to be unaware of what's happening all around. What's important is not to escape from the world, but to engage with it, but engage with it from a position and perspective higher than that of what's usually and practically applied. So that's the overall vision of the series, and I hope to do this every day, but I can't be sure at this time that it will happen every day, but I'll try to be as frequent or as steady as possible. What I'll do in the series is to identify a few developments or public posturing for comments so that we can develop a culture of thinking objectively as well as spiritually on the issues that impinge on our day to day life. And this is a series, the success of which will depend very heavily on how and to what extent the viewers participate. So let's make it as participatory as possible. And if some of you would like to come home and participate in a discussion on an issue of day-to-day significance, you are most welcome. I live in Trivandrum, as you know. All you have to do is to give me a tingle before you come, and we can easily do this. So today I take up three um, items of news, not all of them from yesterday or day before. Just as a starter, I identify three issues for discussion. First of all, the recent news that the Karnataka government is planning to outsource its economic planning or the expertise to manage its economy, or shall we say, the advice as to how the financial state of Karnataka may be improved to an overseas consulting firm called BCG, Boston Consulting Group. They are supposed to be quite well established in their reputation, so I have no quarrel with that, but I have still a question to ask. Am I to believe that Indians, even after 75 years of freedom, even after claiming to have made such great progress in all walks of life, and now we are told we're poised to be the third largest economy of the world, which I believe will take a while before it's realized. All these things are easier said than done. Uh, and certainly, India has produced very outstanding economists, at least two Nobel laureates in economics. And um, I really don't believe that we don't have the economics brain to handle our affairs. I'm also fairly convinced that no one understands the local situation better than the local people. I'm not arguing for intellectual parochialism or regionalism. I'm only saying that what is needed is not so much expertise as character. I don't believe that the finances or the economic robustness of a state or a country can be undermined except by the virus of corruption. Why is it that we are unable to get a handle on this issue? Economists tell us that if India had controlled corruption from 1947, uh, instead of controlling it has only spiraled out of control. Had we maintained reasonable control over corruption since our independence, India would have been, every Indian would have been richer by 5 times. That's the gravity of the problem that we are discussing. Now, no overseas consulting firm can come here and improve our character. And I'm totally convinced that unless and until our character improves, our sense of accountability and transparency, our sense of self respect, because I am totally convinced again that a person with self respect cannot be corrupt. You cannot practice corruption without corrupting yourself, and corrupting oneself means ruining one's worth altogether. Whether you accept 1 rupee or 1 billion rupees as reward for corruption, your result, your plight is miserable. You have lost all your worth, and therefore no person with any self-respect will be party to corruption. So what we need is a little bit more of self-respect, a sense of dignity, personal dignity, and above all, a sense of true patriotism. If every Indian were to also take into account the negative impact his corrupt activities would have on nation building, I'm sure that thought by itself will control this monster of corruption. The tragedy in this country is blatant hypocrisy. Those who are loudest in professing patriotism are also the least shameful or most shameless in practicing corruption. So patriotism and corruption go hand in hand. I thought that when this most patriotic party, BJP, came to power in 2014, under the leadership of a man who proclaimed himself to be the most resolute enemy to corruption, India would enter a new world, a new era of probity, integrity in public life. And that would really kickstart our economy and liberate, unleash the tremendous economic potential that we have. But unfortunately, that has not happened. Rather than control corruption, mechanisms far better than what existed previously were put in place. But when a clear case in point is the electoral bonds. It's a very smart, very smooth, very suave, very clever way of profiting by legally sanctioned corruption. I will not go more into the details thereof. So this is the issue, and if the Karnataka government, which today is Congress government, can control corruption, that itself will take the state way ahead. On the other hand, if corruption is not controlled and you bring 1,000 foreign consulting firms and they give you the best and the sanest of advice, it's going to be of no consequence whatsoever. During the time of the previous government, it was revealed that bribes extorted by political leaders and functionaries in the government were to the tune of 40% of the total budget allocated to a particular project. Now, given that ground reality, and given how much money plays in elections, for example, and how obscenely lavish the lifestyle of political leaders is, and how wasteful governance is, the state treasury leaks at 1,000 points. That's where changes must happen. Now, the Boston Consulting Group will come and tell the Karnataka government what we already know. Namely, there's some 25,000 acres of land which is available on the outskirts of Bengaluru must be monetized. Yeah, if 25,000 1,000 acres of land is monetized, it will net a huge amount of money. You don't need Boston Consulting Group to come and tell you that. Now here, let me take you into confidence. My own experiences. I don't have experience of running a state, but I have ample experience of running a college. When I took over St. Stephen's College, it was in debt. I didn't have money to pay the salaries to my faculty and class 4 staff the first month of my tenure as principal. St. Stephen's was bankrupt, whether you believe it or not. I had to go to the UGC. Fortunately, at that time, the chairman of UGC was a friend of mine. So I barged into his office and I said, I need money. But he said, the time for releasing funds for Delhi colleges is not yet. You're 2 months ahead of time. I said, I can't take that for an answer. I need money and I will not leave your office unless I have the check in my hand. Anyway, Professor Thorat, who was the UGC chairman at the time, understood my predicament and he convened a meeting and he released the funds not only for St. Stephen's College but to all colleges in Delhi, so that no favor was shown to my college. Now, that was a state in which I inherited the college. And I began to look into them. I'm not an economist. I taught English literature, and you know that professors of literature are notoriously incapable of handling finances. So my financial skills, my economics expertise is a very handsome 0. But I had a tremendous motivation and imperious desire to clean up. I knew there was something seriously wrong, and I all along suspected, having been in college for a long period of time, that behind the facade of polished civilized life, there is the sewer of corruption running all the time. So I put myself after the task. And the first area I looked into was the residence, that is what others people call hostel. Now, residence has 2 components. One is rent revenue. Second is revenue on account of running the mess. Rent revenue is 100% a profit for the college, except for annual maintenance, which is negligible. Then mess. I found, to my utter shock, that the mess was incurring a loss. And I straight away understood why it was running on loss. So I put sufficient checks and balances, and it began to yield result in the first month itself. In the first 70 days, the mess produced a surplus, a profit of 2 lakh rupees. So you can imagine what can be done. To cut a long story short, by the time I retired in 2016, after tenure of nearly a little less than 9 years, I left behind 11.5 crores as endowment fund for the college, so that the college would not be in the state of uncertainty and anxiety that I found it when I took charge of the college. These things are possible, and I could do all of that without accepting 1 rupee or taking 1 rupee on account of admission or appointment. I did 37 appointments to permanent posts, and a college can be run without taking 1 rupee bribe, without corrupting its soul, maintaining its dignity. I want to emphasize this because there is this dogma prevalent in Kerala that's impossible to run a Christian college without corruption. I can bear testimony to the fact that not only that a college can be run 100% clean of corruption and other malpractices, but that is the only way to run a college, whether it is Christian or any other college for that matter, because how can the temple of learning be corrupted? So, as far as the Karnataka government's decision to invite the Boston Consulting Group to set its finances straight, I'm afraid I'm in disagreement. The fact that others have done it, others are still doing it, doesn't change my view. I feel that there's absolutely no need to do this. If at all a foreign agency want to be involved, they must do it entirely free of cost. Otherwise, we have got plenty of economics brain. I know this for a fact. Karnataka itself has plenty of economics brain, and these resources must be tapped. And I said, and I want to repeat, unless and until a culture of accountability, transparency, and commitment to public welfare is improved substantially, no amount of sane or profound economics or financial advice will avail us to any extent. So that's what I have to say about this move. The second thing I want to comment on is something that you have seen for the last 10 years in particular. It used to happen even before, but last 10 years in particular. If you have watched NewsHour discussions, it's called prime time discussions, you'll have spokespersons from different parties, and there will be obviously invariably a spokesperson of the BJP, and other parties of course would vary, but the BJP spokesperson is a must. Spokespersons of the BJP would change, but a BJP spokesperson would be an invariable fix. Now, whenever the BJP was accused in the last 10 years of corruption or any malpractice or any serious collapse in governance, the standard response would be, look who is talking. How can you, especially pointing to the Congress spokesperson, how dare you talk about this? You did the same thing when you were in power. But of course, many people have said, BJP is a party with their difference and therefore they shouldn't say like that. And that's not my point. That's their point. And that's a valid point. What I have to say is different. What I have to say is something that has not been said yet. And that's something that needs to be said. And that is, what is the assumption on the basis of which the BJP spokesman says to the spokesperson of the Congress or any other opposition party, you have no moral right to talk about this because you also did the same thing? What is the logic? The logic is a totally horrible one, a horrendously wrong logic. And what is that? The assumption is that the corruption of a BJP government, whether it is the states or the central government, is a crime against the Congress party or opposition parties. Pardon me, that's not the case. Corruption is a crime against the people of India, we the people of India. Now, if the Congress party has practiced corruption, the people have punished them. That's why they are thrown out. And I also voted against the Congress party. Let me say this to you very clearly. When I came to the conclusion, as I indeed did by 2011, I voted against the party. No doubt about it. And I will, because corruption is a crime against my country and I will not tolerate it no matter which party practices it. That's where I stand. So I want the people of India to be clear in their thinking that this bogus logic that the parties have generated, that corruption is kind of bad manners against each other. Oh, Congress party practice corruption, therefore I can practice corruption, as though the corruption practiced by BJP is only against Congress. That's not the case at all. The corruption practiced by Congress or BJP is against the country, against the people of India. So, if Congress party commits corruption, practices corruption, the people will punish them, and people have punished them, there's no doubt about it. And the same people will also punish BJP if it's corrupt. Because BJP was excessively careful and extremely clever in hiding the trails. There's no doubt about it. But massive malfeasance or massive acts of financial irregularities or corrupt deeds cannot be hidden for long. For example, the case of whatever the NTA, National Testing Agency, has done, it's out in the open. Now, this corruption cannot be directly connected to the activities of the party, but it's happening under the auspices of a particular government. Or think of the electoral bonds issue. Think of the various allegations that have come and gone. Allegations that could not make any headway. For example, the allegations that bribes were involved in the Rafale deal, so on and so on. So many instances came, but they were all effectively suppressed. So, the unprecedented ability to manage allegations is not the same as unprecedented integrity. Now, there's confusion here. That confusion has been foisted on the people of India, and we need to be clear about this. So, the most important point I want to underline is that corruption is not a game to be played between parties. Corruption is an insult, it's a crime against the people of India. It is an attack on the welfare of the people. And above all, it is raping the soul of India, the soul of Mother India. It's a very serious matter. And somehow it's been turned into some kind of a verbal jugglery on television sets. And matters are settled there, and everybody goes home feeling very smug and complacent about it. And the people of India are paying the price, the consequences of it. So it's not enough to say, look who is talking, what business do you have to talk about it? You also did the same thing. Well, if you are sitting here only to do what the others have done, others who are voted out by the people of India for doing what they have done, then what right, what moral authority do you have to sit there? What the spokesperson of the BJP should say is, look, we have not done it. Then I would accept it. But when you say we have not done it, it must be based on facts. And it should also be open to verification or investigation. You can't say that nobody can investigate me, and I am in complete control of all the investigating agencies, and they'll be used only against our political adversaries, and I'm corrupt and I'm completely beyond all blemish. Nobody will buy that. There was a time perhaps people could have given it some margin. Say in the the first 5 years of the Modi government, people gave it a wide enough margin. But as days went by, the realizations began to grow upon the people, began to gain ground with the people, that this is all a very peculiar game. We are being taken for a ride. And I tell you, if BJP has any wisdom, they will realize that no people want to know that they are being taken for a ride. In fact, after a point of time, admiration will turn into indignation, and there are evident and alarming signs that this is already happening, and it has already happened, if you like, in states like Uttar Pradesh, etc., where the BJP suffered quite an unexpected blow, electoral blow, in the recently concluded general elections. So, that's the second point where I thought we could exercise our minds on. First, I commented on the Karnataka government's decision. I hope they won't pursue it, to engage the Boston Consulting Group to set its finances in health. The second is this kind of canard that's being cast upon the people via the electronic media regularly, that corruption is some kind of a game, football, volleyball or kabaddi, whatever, between the ruling party and some other party or some other parties. This is not the case. The people of India are the victims. So you have to answer the people of India. That's the second point. The third point I want to comment on is, if you recall, if you go back to 2014, soon after Modi assumed office, Sri Amit Shah announced that for the next 50 years, only the BJP will rule. Now, this was hailed and applauded and all that, but it struck me as a particularly sinister statement. Now, why? Because here I crave your indulgence. Now, in Modi's run-up to power, one of the things he banked heavily on was the anti-dynasty sentiment. The Nehru-Gandhi family was lambasted for its um, dynastic pretensions and privileges. And the people of India bought it. It made a huge impact. What is the dynastic principle? The dynastic principle is that the authority of the people is minimized. Secondly, the freedom of choice given to the people is made meaningless. After all, in the dynastic mode, power will be handled only by members of a family, and their merit is only that they belong to the family, and therefore those outside the family have nothing to do with how power is to be handled and shared for generations to come. That's the problem with the dynastic mindset. Now, look at Amit Shah's claim that only BJP will rule for the next 50 years. Now, if that prediction is to be made true, is to be fulfilled, the BJP becomes obliged to exclude all competition. And not only competition of the opposition parties, the BJP must also create conditions in which the electorate in India will have only one option, and that is to vote for candidates of one party, namely BJP. Let's be very clear about it, because these two points are of extreme importance. If Amit Shah's prediction that India will be ruled for the next 50 years at least only by the BJP, and if that prediction is to come true, two conditions must be created. Namely, that no one other than the BJP or the political wing of the Sangh Parivar should be eligible to participate in this process. Because if there is a democratic election, on paper, the other party has an equal chance. Unequal election is no election in democracy. That's why we talk about the level playing field. So, if Amit Shah's prediction is to come true, then all of the political parties must be de facto, in effect, excluded from this process. And it is a foretaste of that this promise of making India Congress Mukt was projected. Now, you please tell me, in whose interest is the elimination of Congress as a national party projected? How does the elimination of Congress as an alternative, Congress as a political party, promote the welfare of the common man? Nobody raised this question. Nobody even told you that the whole idea was to finish off opposition one after the other, so that there will be no effective competition to the BJP at the electoral level, so that this projected goal of power being handled or governance of the country being undertaken only by one party, namely BJP, would be secured. And it's very clear that through a variety of political strategies, the BJP did, or the Chanakya of India, Amit Shah, did work towards that goal. The consequences are there to say, I don't have to list them, including for the first time, very obvious attempts made to put opposition parties at a serious disadvantage in the electoral process. We can quickly, offhand, recall arresting two chief ministers, putting them in jail during the election process, so that they won't participate in the process, and they were key figures in their parties. Without them, their party would be like headless chicken. And more than that, freezing the funds of the principal opposition party, the Congress, plus also all other minor and major fine-tuning of the electoral processes, media and so on and so forth. Then, unethical practices like breaking parties, bribing, allegedly bribing members of parliament, or luring leaders of other parties and forcing them to join BJP using ED and all, allegedly. We don't know. These are things that are being talked about in the public space. Now, all of this put together actually makes sense in the light of what Amit Shah promised, that for the next 50 years, BJP will not vacate the seat of power. The second point we must remember is, and which issues from the first, that that particular promise or prophecy, if you like, Chanakya becomes a prophet only if the people of India had denied the right to choose. In other words, they are given the freedom to choose only a designated person and a designated party. Only then will this promise or prophecy of BJP staying in power for 50 years. How else do you understand that promise? And I would not have said it if I had not watched all the subsequent developments and come to a conclusion that that statement was made very seriously and everything was done in order to ensure that Amit Shah prophecy was fulfilled. But unfortunately, history has this very peculiar way of playing fast and loose with great men, men of almighty power and control, etc. And they go to bed entertaining, fondling dreams of total control. When they wake up, they realize that the day is gone. Now, this is a peculiar thing about it. Anyway, so I hope to continue this process of reflecting on contemporary events under the broad title News and Views. Please let me have your comments whether you find this series meaningful. If there is not sufficient interest, then of course I'll discontinue this process. I'll conclude that all of you are thinking on your own and your thinking is adequate, which is more than likely. My only concern is that we should not only be passive consumers of whatever is dished out to us by the various media channels, we must also become active agents of thought so that our thinking process itself makes an impact in the total environment that prevails in this country. So, thank you very much for walking with me so far. I notice that it's already 32 minutes. I'm testing your patience, but anyway, the good thing is that you can break off anytime you want and feel free to do so anyway you would, even if I don't say that you are free. So we'll continue this process, but depending on your feedback, please let me know whether you find this useful or not. Thank you and have a good day.